It is such a joy for me to have Joanna here. So she and I met in probably 1968, 69. I came to Hollywood right out of the university. I graduated from UWM, University of Wisconsin in Milwaukee. Raised in the Midwest, that's why I love it here. Went to Hollywood and right out of college and majored in life drawing. And for all you young artists who love to draw, just keep it up, because it led me to a career where life drawing was the most important thing that you could do. That was what they were looking for. Now you have to understand, when we first started in animation, everything was called 2D, hand-drawn animation. So what we're going to do here, I'm going to show you, we're going to start out showing you my animation reel, that it starts with the very first animation I ever did, and then it's going to go through my career. And then as we talk today, we'll talk about our careers, and then we're going to talk about different kinds of art that is you needed to do to create this animation. And we have a display over there against the wall, so when we're done, you guys please feel free to look at it. And there's all kinds of samples, and we'll talk about that as well. So Joanna Romersa, welcome to Fairfield.
Thank you so much. The minute I got off the plane, I thought, oh, and came in, and Donna, thank you, Donna, for picking me up. I said, this is where I belong. It's so beautiful. And coming from Las Vegas, of course, which is dry and miserable and noisy, and this is heaven in comparison. Yeah, I can do that. I started at Walt Disney Studio in 1954 and have enjoyed 63 years in the business and have seen it change tremendously. And we'll talk more about that. But thank you, and I love being here.
Okay. So we're just going to start with my reel. First animation I ever did.
If we lived in the kind of world where nobody ever got hurt, life would be quite different. But in the real world, the hurts are real. And someday, you may need real help. Shudder Cayetano Clayton.
Dr. Brothers book, you can't put it down, especially when you discover the beautiful garden of rose petal place.
I did all the little girls. That's me right there.
The Rose Petal Place books from Parker Brothers. It's fun you can't put down. Each will say anything.
So most of this stuff is commercials, because that's where I really learned to animate.
What could it be? Christmas crunch, what happened to me?
This crunch is special to make breakfast.
I did animated this whole thing.
Crunch berries.
Very sweet, delicious.
But it's only here till Christmas. Christmas crunch is a very merry part of this balanced breakfast. You can get one of 4 jolly ornaments.
It's a soggy.
Camping on a sled or skiing.
There's one neat specially marked box of Christmas crunch.
Yeah, I've been adrift for days.
Do you remember, you guys? Fruit Loops?
Two flavors of fruit.
Fruit.
Follow my nose.
I'm on your trail. Whoa.
It's always nose. Fruit Loop cereal.
natural orange, lemon, and cherry flavors, and lots of vitamin C part of this complete breakfast. Like them?
This is a very special one. All these backgrounds are actual cutouts, animated art, no CGI.
Outstanding, man. Look at all these Kellogg's Fruit Loops.
Yes, you might make them part of your complete breakfast.
Yeah, all I need is milk. Milk? Hey guys, you hungry?
I actually got to draw Popeye. And olive oil.
Popeye, I hope you're not too pooped to pop a shark. With me, oatmeal, I never too pooped to pop.
Look at olive oil. Popeye went commercial. This is the first titles I did. And I animated about half of it. It was really a great experience. That's the title. Ellen Genoweth, one of her first casting in a feature. And this is Cedric the Entertainer. We did this as a pilot for a TV show. And you'll see everything is, I hand drew everything and used photographs as backgrounds. Nice dance cycle.
Oh, it's 6 o'clock and I'm out of here. Today I'm getting my big screen TV.
It was called Skull and Schoolyard.
Look at that boy, Big Joe. He's too big to play with them kids. Big Joe, you hurt somebody.
Ain't no my man, Horace Braggs. He's a patriarch of the neighborhood. He is Bonjour. One trip to Paris and the brother thinks he's French.
Oh, yeah. I'm finally getting out of layaway. I see you getting your little TV out of there, Horace. You know mine's still bigger. I'm home, Miss B, baby. The big man is here.
Real Monsters from Klasky Tupo. Santo Begito, the titles. This was a great series, but it only lasted one season. It's so cute. Now this is going to be a montage of different scenes that I animated and different projects. Oops. You can see all the different styles. This was in the World Cup. This one got me to won me a trip to France as one of the top 100 commercials. All one scene.
Every day, or searching online anytime with homes on chicago.tribune.com. No wonder we're the best real estate marketplace in the Midwest. Buying or selling.
We did the whole thing in 5 weeks.
Now, moving in, that's something else entirely.
A message to Miss Keith.
And this ran in New York for many, a couple of years. PSA.
The health department is asking every New Yorker to be all standing water around their homes. Keep mosquitoes out with tight-fitting screens, to wear long pants and sleeves in the evenings. So bug off. They're out of here.
My favorite.
Hey, dog, look, it's the You think kid from under that time?
10 times. And now again, triumphs over cheap pitching eggs.
My hero!
Now, when you purchase a Taco Bell Kids meal, you can get the big blue king superhero, the Tick, or another city bird. You can collect all 4 at Taco
Great
Bell.
toys.
Taco Bell!
That's that food song!
Taco Bell presents Nacho and Dog.
Macho, what are you doing?
Me? I'm in training.
What for?
The wide world of guacamole diving.
Kids, don't try this at home.
Now, when you buy a Taco Bell Kids meal, you can get the Fast Rider or Tenko in the Guardians of the Magic. Look, the chopper transforms. You can collect all 4 at Taco Bell.
Don't mess with me, man. I'm crazy.
Taco Bell!
That's that food song!
There was no CGI. That was all done 2D animation combined with live action. It's so soft. And you all recognize these guys. Yes, Chucky. Those are called interstitials. This is rocket power. I animated that. Oh man, that was so much fun. That's me chained to my desk. Okay, that's it. So the reason why, and I think I should just explain this, is that I never could get a job at Disney. Okay, that was the thing you always wanted to do, because when I started, when I came from Milwaukee, with my boyfriend, we drove here, and I got a job at Hanna-Barbera. And I thought, oh boy, I brought my portfolio, all these beautiful life drawings. I said, oh, I got a job. It was in ink and paint. And ink and paint is the very last process that they do from June to September. That's when all the animation has to be Xeroxed and cells, so this is at Hanna-Barbera, so that they can be finished in time for the September deadline. I don't know if you remember that, but September was when all the new cartoon shows would come on Saturday mornings. And so ink and paint was like, you know, top, I don't know, I think what, earned $60, $70 a week or something. It was a big deal. And it was a lot of fun. But actually, that was the start of my career, and I've been working in it ever since, working my way up to different things. After my ink and paint experience, then I, instead of getting laid off, which they did to everybody else, right? They laid everybody else in September and then hire them again in when they were starting the new artwork and new season in February, maybe. January, February. So in the next job I got was called cell wiping, which in those days, Hanna-Barbera was a factory. Everything was done in one building. So there was a layout department, a storyboard department. Well, I think the layout people did the storyboards as well, right? Did they? No. There was a storyboard department. There was a writing department, Mel Blanc, they had all the talent come in and recorded it right into the studio. All the Xerox machines were down in the basement. And I had a job after the ink and paint. I had a job as a gopher, like a PA. And it just happened to be in the layout department, the hippest department, I'm sorry to say, where all the really great designers and animators were on the same floor. And my job was in the beginning, with a wonderful lady called Edna Busick, who was just a character in herself. And we would take the animation drawings, the backgrounds and so forth, and we would Xerox them. And Hanna-Barbera was, the reason it was doing so well is because they were the master of limited animation. And we'll talk more about that when we talk about the process of animation. But they would have scenes, like for instance, Scooby-Doo walking. Well, they would have us copy that, and it was called same as, or what else is it called?
Stock.
Stock animation. So if you were an animator and you had so much, given so many scenes, one or two scenes would say stock animation, blah, 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 and then you'd had to go to the stock department and pick up that scene, which already had the animation in, and then all you would do is re-expose it on your exposure sheets. And so that was my job. And during that time in the layout department, I got to meet all the wonderful friends that we are friends today. Some of the famous people that you might know, you might not. Willie Ito, Jerry Eisenberg, who else? Yeah, I'm gonna let you
Homer Jonas, Mo Golub. These were, first of all, very funny men, and they thought funny. We were really happy in those days, and we had a lot of fun. And they would create the characters, because the story had to be made. I don't want to get ahead of you here.
Yes, okay.
The concept of what are we going to do with this is we get the concept of the story, the characters, and they would give this information to the layout department, and they would create this character.
So my career progression actually kind of got, after I was there for a couple of years, I actually got initiated into TM, and I met my husband there. And this was in '69. I got initiated, I think, in May of '69. And he and I got together at the end of that year. And I moved in with him, and we had a baby in '71. So I was still working at Hanna-Barbera during that time. But once I had a child, I was able to work at home. And for the next 20 years, I freelanced animation, and I was basically at home for my daughter every day. It was really nice. Of course, I worked day and night and every weekend. But one of the things that I wanted to do, I learned assistant animation at Hanna-Barbera because there was maybe 1 or 2 other women working there in the animation department at the time. And one of these ladies, what was her name?
Joan Orbison.
She remembers the names, I don't. Joan Orbison took me under her wing, and when I had downtime, she sat over there, I sat over here, and I'd go talk to her, and she said, here, you do some assistant animation. So she showed me how to do this. And then when my daughter was born, I just said, hey, I'm an assistant animator, give me some footage. And they did, and I really didn't know what I was doing, but because I could draw, I picked up 100 feet of animation, which is, we will tell you what that is, but film is measured in feet. There's 16 frames per foot, and that's how everything, there's 24 frames per second.
This would be one second of film.
Yeah.
And you would expose it, you could go 6 levels. Camera instruction was here, director's instruction here, track reading here, and we'll talk more about track reading later. But you can imagine this is 1, 2.5 seconds.
Yeah.
And all of the drawings that would be possibly to be made on different levels are exposed on this exposure sheet. And this follows the animation all the way through to camera and editorial, so that it's like the skeleton that they hang everything on.
Yeah. So anyhow, just a quick story. So I picked up this animation on a Friday, and I didn't know when it was due. And I didn't really know what I was doing, so I did the whole thing over the weekend and turned it in on Monday, and they said, it wasn't due until next Friday. And I worked day and night to get this done, but because I knew how to draw, I did it. So thank you, right hand, because I've been drawing since I was 2 years old. You know, when you love to draw and you're born to draw, you just draw, right? And so I've been so blessed, both of us really, to have a career in drawing. And animation is some of the best drawing, the most critical drawing. As you can see, all kinds of characters. And the reason I went into commercials is because I was working at home. The animation business, and you can talk a little bit more about that. It was in the heyday, the 60s and 70s, and then things started going overseas, animation changed, and the jobs were hard to find in the studios. But I found my mentors in the animation world, and one of my mentors was Lee Mishkin, a wonderful old big fat guy with a beard, and he was a master animator, and he had his own little studio. And in the Hollywood, in what would you say, the 70s and 80s, that's where all the animation studios were. So I was able to go from one little studio to another little studio to another little, hey, you got any work? And in those days, your reputation went before you. If you were good at an assistant, you could always get work. And then once I started animating, Lee Mishkin gave me my first job. You know, I got so good at being assistant for 7 years with him. He got so lazy as being an animator. He would do like the first drawing, maybe another drawing, and then sort of another drawing, and then there's like 12 drawings in between, and I had to figure out everything, and then I had to clean everything. Finally, I said to him, you know, honey, I got it. I'm an animator now. I'm not gonna make $75 an hour when you make $300 a foot, you know. So anyhow, he gave me my first job, and ever since then I was animating. And so because these different boutique studios knew who I was able to get jobs. Like the very first job was at Playhouse Pictures. My friend directed it. The quality of those films are so bad, but it shows you the kinds of little jobs that I got. And later on, I worked some of those wonderful commercials. I worked at a place called Duck Soup Productions, which was the best boutique studio at commercials. They are Dwayne Crowther and Roger Chenard. Dwayne, he created Trix Rabbit. They had the Toucan Sam account. They had a tiger. Tony the Tiger. So we worked on all kinds of things, and for me it was so much fun because when you're in a small studio, everybody gets to do everything, you know, and everybody is very talented. You're working with some of the best directors, and that's where I really learned my trade. And after that, I worked for different studios, did all kinds of stuff, and finally I got at Klasky Csupo. My last 12 years of my career was at Klasky Csupo, and I know nobody knows the name of that studio, but they originated the Rugrats. And in fact, they originated The Simpsons. They were the first studio to do The Simpsons, and I actually got to do some of the last street timing on The Simpsons, and then they lost the account. But there I learned, we worked on the Rugrats, Wild Thornberries, As Told by Ginger, Rocket Power, but they also developed a commercial department. And so I was the only woman in the commercial department. And of course, all the guys were the directors. And finally, after a few years, and I was doing all the dirty work, I said, and they were going to promote some young guy who came in and said, oh, now I'm going to be a director, you know, because he was some hotshot guy. I said, no, 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 no. Either I get to be a director now or I'm quitting. And they couldn't afford me to, because I did all their work. So then I became a director, and that's where all those last commercials you saw, I directed all of those commercials. And it was so rewarding. I'm a born director, you know. And it was so much fun because you're working with the best animators, you're working with just a small crew, you have a fast deadline, and so you're constantly changing creatively. Whereas when you work in series or movies, you can work on the same project for years and do the same thing over and over again. So I had a very nice career, and take it. I'm going to give it to her. She has even a more interesting career.
There's 63 years to talk about, and the changes that have happened in all of that time are monumental. However, animation is always the same, motion is the same, people are the same, and we just change technology to go along with it. Where do I start? I started at Disney on Lady and the Tramp, which was, of course, one of the most beautiful. And because, indeed, I was a woman and I was not allowed even to be in the animation building because I was not an animator, and the only men were animators. If you were a secretary, or the nurse was a female, as I remember. I applied to be an inker. And as an inker, we traced the original drawings onto cell. And from the cell, it was flipped over and painted on the back. Then that is placed on the background, which is painted. and it can be painted in different, the same background would be day and night. Many, many processes to animation, but it all, for me, it started with inking, and I inked for 15 years. I got very bored with it after 2 years, and I said I wanted to get into in-betweening, and they told me, no, you can't. You will go away, and we can't afford to train you. So you're stuck in ink and paint, or I could be a checker. Well, that wouldn't work either, but so I quit, and I went to a commercial house too, like with Bonita. Bonita was so creative, where I just kind of followed along. I had no intention of making art my career, even though I could draw. But I learned, and working in commercials, indeed, we had very creative, very funny people to work with. And then I went from commercials to Hanna-Barbera, where I met Bonita. Bonita was at the Xerox machine doing something, and I came up and she made a joke, because we always had fun. And eventually I became an animator at Hanna-Barbera. The Xerox machines came in and replaced me. So those of us who could draw became in-betweeners, and those who didn't draw went into the Xerox process of actually producing the cells. When I became an animator, this opened up a whole new world for me, because it was creative. And I was fortunate to be taught by some of the very best animators from Disney, because in the 70s, they decided, 70s and 80s, they fired everybody that was over 65. And many of these men who had been there working on those wonderful old movies, like Art Babbitt, names, Bolis Jones,
Hathcock.
Jerry Hathcock. Yeah. Why? How does that happen? I don't know. Anyway, these are the men that taught me how to actually animate. And you don't just move from one drawing to another. There's much motion in between. As the body moves, the hips move, and this creates the full animated look. However, with Hanna-Barbera, they were able to use the cell levels, holding the body, and then making the arms move, making the legs move, making the head move, the mouth move, the eyes move, and this created the level, which also made it more possible to do it, because it's very expensive. And many people in every department, you can imagine how many drawings it took to complete a film. Where else do we go from here?
Go ahead, just keep going. Talk a little bit more about your career.
My career really took off at Hanna-Barbera. I went from an inker to a director, animator, director, producer, director, and then came back a bit to just a timing director. I went back to Disney and worked on many of the direct-to-videos that we made. Cinderella 2, Dreams Come True. Many of the just off-the-wall crazy things that Disney has done for direct-to-video.
Winnie the Pooh.
Winnie the Pooh. Actually, I worked on
Charlotte's Web.
Charlotte's Web. Oh, that Charlotte's Web was at Hanna-Barbera. Hanna-Barbera made a lot of feature films too. Last of the Curlews, which was a wonderful, beautiful film, and I don't know if anybody has ever seen it. Cyrano de Bergerac. We did quite a few really big projects. And again, these animators were Disney animators, and of course on those films, only the very top echelon in the animation got the screen credit. I didn't actually get screen credit until I was working on Inch High Private Eye, which was another really darling show, but it only lasted one season. Josie and the Pussycats, Willie and the Chopper Buns. I mean, we could name a whole lot of them. It was fun every day. Bonita and I worked at a studio called Sanrio Films. You may have seen the Hello Kitty little paraphernalia. Hello Kitty was the money behind Sanrio Films. And for 6 months, we did nothing but party and, and create characters. It was a metamorphosis to be the Greek mythology. And there were 7 sections, 7 Greek stories that we were telling with the same characters in each of the particular fables. Because we had so many wonderful people there. Stan Walsh, who was every day I would say, "Good morning, Stan. How are you?" "Oh, I'm fine. I'm just basting a turkey," and indeed, it was a turkey. It didn't go anywhere. We finally finished it. I think they finished it in Japan. And it was quite an experience. But because the industry was changing and technology came in, and all of the actual animation went overseas. I went to Australia. I was fortunate to be a producer at that point and had some time in Australia and in the Philippines and in Taiwan, where the actual work was done. And the thing that was interesting to me was that as technology took over here in the States, we became more and more isolated into individual rooms, and it was dark. Where when I would go to the Philippines or I'd go to Thailand, or it was all open like it was originally, where the background department had the most beautiful lights because they had to have the true color. And we made jokes of each other. We drew cartoons of each other, and oh my God, we were merciless. But and some of those I have been able to save. We as women really did have to fight our way through. And when I worked for Backstreet Krantz, which was the first X-rated cartoon, which was really, really bizarre.
Fritz the Cat.
Fritz the Cat was the film. And if I wasn't pinched or patted, I thought that they were mad at me, you know? And but we just got used to it, but it was also fun. But I'm just grateful, so grateful that I was able to support my family and be happy and go to work every day and couldn't wait to get there. Even when I worked at home, and like Bonita, when I had my children, I worked at home. But it was truly by chance and a lot of hard work and perseverance, but more laughs than that.
You know, we were lucky because we were in the heyday of 2D animation through Hanna-Barbera, working with the best artists. And when Hanna-Barbera started going overseas, to cut costs, I think the first thing that went overseas was ink and paint. Then came assistant animation. As soon as they were able to start training, I think they sent it to Japan first, and then different places, like you say, the Philippines, Australia. And I actually, when I didn't know what I was going to do. I was out of work, and I got an opportunity. Hey, you want to go to China? So, I mean, who would think that working in Hollywood, you'd end up going to mainland China and opening the first co-venture animation studio in China, and which we did, and it was quite an experience. And it was interesting. I was sitting in a hotel in China, in Guangzhou. We would work 6 days a week, and our job was to teach this Chinese animation studio how to do American style drawing. They actually knew how to animate, but they didn't know how to do limited animation. So that was a whole technical thing. So anyhow, I'm sitting in my hotel room and I'm watching television, and the Smurfs comes on. Now, when you work in TV and you do all this stuff, you don't actually see your work because it's off in production, and if you don't watch every show, you'll never even, 2 seconds of your animation here or 2 there. I actually saw my animation in China on TV, and I saw my first credits for the Smurfs. I never saw my credits before. I had to go to China to do that. But that studio later went into Shenzhen, which was then the economic zone. And after that, I was actually sent to Paris, France. I got to work there was a studio there that was doing things, and then I accompanied that back to China. And then I also got to work in Munich for a feature film. So who knew that working in this business, starting out in Hollywood, I got to actually work in several, really interesting countries. So I think, what we'd like to do now is, should we talk about how to make animation?
Sure.
Yeah.
Are you getting tired of this? Do we need a break? Okay.
So what do you think? We should, okay, so I think what we'll start doing is talking about the whole process of animation, okay? I think that some of the most interesting things for artists is creating characters and doing some of the pre-production stuff.
Which is what they do now. Pre-production is practically the only thing that is left for animators here. And it is the same, and that's why I was able to work so many years, even though the work went overseas, because pre-production, and at that point I was a director, we could indeed continue working.
Go ahead.
I'm going to stand up so I can move around a little bit. To establish in the beginning, in fact, at Hanna-Barbera, when things were kind of in the downtime and they asked me to come up with something new, well, what is new? And to me, story is the basics for anything. It doesn't matter how beautiful you make it. If you don't have a story, people are not going to hang around and watch it. So for me, Shakespeare was the master storyteller. So when they asked me to develop something, I said, okay, let's do a series of Shakespeare, the comedies. So I came up with this little guy, but he was also very schizophrenic and would really just jump around like crazy. This is one of the characters I designed for Much Ado About Nothing, Beatrice, the buffoon.
Hold it up a little longer.
the father who was distraught, one of the handymaids. And so I sold this idea to Hanna-Barbera. And unfortunately, they decided that Bill and Joe were no longer needed. And so they brought in Ted Turner. And Ted Turner, with Warner Brothers, of course, now decided no, they didn't want any new projects. So this then was shelved. But that's okay. I had the experience to develop a show. But when you develop, one of the shows that I did produce and work on was called the Arabian Nights. And indeed,
Here, let me hold it for you.
this is a model pack. Once you establish how many characters you're going to have in a show, you have to have a model pack, and you have to have a turnarounds of each of the characters. After the character has been designed, it goes to storyboard, or of course it's your script. Your soundtrack has to be done first, of course. Then it becomes a storyboard, and the storyboard reads very much like a comic strip. All of the scenes are placed in order, and it is timed to be the exact amount of, is it going to be a 20-minute film? Is it going to be an hour and a half? Whatever it is, it all has to be timed down to the second. And each second, each bit of animation, the soundtrack, everything is on the storyboard.
And we have samples. You can come up here and look at this, and all along the wall, we have samples of model packs for Rugrats, some other, stuff. So all that art on the wall is shows you the kind of production work that is needed. So when we're done, you guys just file through, and you can come up here. Like, well, this is typical of a model sheet, of a how to draw this particular character. And you always have a rundown where you start out with the basics, so you know what kind of body shape it is. And like this character is 3 heads high. And that's sort of like how we would judge how to keep your characters the same. How many heads high is it? Is it 2.5 heads high? That way, when you're animating and you're going through it, you go, oh yeah, I better get back on model because he's getting too big or too small.
There on the board are all of the characters in proportion to how tall they are, what they look like, how they're colored, and it has to be determined ahead of time. Not like a live action film where they can shoot from 3 or 4 different angles, then in the editorial department, put it together. With animation, because it is so expensive, it all has to be pre-planned. It's almost like editing before the film is even done, because everything is nailed down. There's no time for waste.
Klasky Csupo revolutionized Nickelodeon with their Rugrats series. They put it back, they put it on the map, really. And they were sticklers just because everything was done overseas. The Philippines, Korea was a big place. And so everything was really nailed down. All the props, there was a prop division. There was a layout division where every, just like she showed you, every scene, every movement was put, it's like a book. And then that layout, those storyboards were then put under camera in Premiere, and it was made into like a Leica reel, they call it, an animatic. That means when you look at it, whoever is looking at it is moving frame by frame, but the timing is there. So they'll have dialogue, whatever the dialogue is underneath the scene, and the pictures that go with it, and then the cuts, even the camera moves. They have that before they even start animating, because you have to realize these people, they didn't speak English, they couldn't read English, so we had, where's those sheets? We had sheet directions in English, then it had to be translated into whatever language it was in. I don't know how they ever got it done. Those are mouth charts?
Mouth charts.
Yeah, I was good. Now, you want to, some of the weirdest characters were from Klasky Csupo. For instance, these are mouth charts from, wild thornberries. I mean, look at those mouths. They're just so, and I did all of these mouth charts, by the way. It was great. It was so much fun to figure out how to do that. And it worked. I don't know, have any of you guys ever watched Wild Thornberries? Yeah, anybody watch Rugrats? Don't you just love them?
Yeah.
Oh my God, my favorite characters. And the feature films were fabulous. They were absolutely fabulous. So we have over there Rugrat model sheets. These shows you some from Wild Thornberries. And so that's how production was done, okay? It was a big, big deal. And in commercials, now it's a whole nother ball game. Layouts, since we did everything in-house, we didn't send it overseas. I'm going to show you how, let's do, which one we want to do first? I don't want to do that one first.
Okay.
I want to do...
Taco Bell?
Yeah, let's do Taco Bell. Do I have to? We need to kind of close the drapes now, because I want to show you a series of drawings that'll kind of help you see what we work with and how it ends up. Can you see over my head?
Yes.
Okay, because I can see here. Now what we're looking at, the first thing we get, this is what the client gave us. This is a client drawing. Okay, go on. That's their storyboard. As you can see, not the best idea and pretty rough. Okay, then go on. That's my storyboard. Makes a whole lot of difference. Okay, continue on. There we go. So you see, everything is from that storyboard. Then we shot each film, timed it, and we made a little film so they could say, yeah, I like it. All right, what's next? So that's a background. That's one, again, part of the storyboard. There we go. Okay, see, it was such a great, and see, that was their drawing, but no, actually, I think this was a rough, go ahead, what's the next one? Yeah, that's part of my animation, by the way. That is actual animation drawings. Okay, let's see what we got. Yeah. And then let's go play the actual commercial. Do you have it?
Yeah, here it is. Let's see. Here it is.
So that's the finished product.
Now you can get Nacho and Dog from the comfort of their own couch. When you purchase a Taco Bell kids meal, you can collect all
See, that's that animation. So the next thing that we had to do, let's do a Kit and Caboodle.
Okay.
This was a very difficult scene, commercial. Everything in it was miniature props. There was like a little bathing pool. There was a tray with little tiny things on it. Okay, see, that's not the first one.
Okay.
That's the background. Go back.
They might be out of order.
Back. Once you're seeing, that's the background characters. Okay, go forward. There's that. Go forward. There. No, more. Did you get it all on?
I think so.
There. Okay. Let's go back. There. You see, all that light drawing is actually a big photograph that I had on my desk, and I had to just about trace everything. And then this is the first, he's actually carrying a tray that moved. It was actually a prop that moved, and I had to match my animation with that. So that's why these layouts are so important. So you can move through the layout. So he's dancing, see, that's a tray he's carrying. And there he is, he's gonna turn around. Now these are the background people. They're, casually looking through, they're in the pool, and he's drinking something. She's sitting on a miniature lawn chair. I mean, these commercial houses, they're crazy. Spend a lot of money on this stuff. Go on. So that's sort of what that looks like. And there you see everyone is animated. They're just doing silly things in the background. There they are. What's going on? Oh, she's pissed at this guy. She's going to do something with him because he's looking at her. See, she doesn't like that. And he's in the meantime just drinking away. And now, so now he's coming back with the tray of stuff. Okay, so what's going on? A shadow comes on. The shadow is coming. They look. Help. Shadow. And then it goes to, what the shadow is, it's a cat. So now I'm going to show you the commercial. So that's what it took to get all of this. Now look at the end result.
And that's just pre-production.
Yeah.
That's not even after the fact.
Yeah. That's all.
Oh, an unexpected guest. Looking for refreshments? Don't soggy bite. Yow! You want the whole tin caboodle. Come and get it. The shapes, the flavors, and hey, Mr. Cat, stuffing's where it's at.
Kit and Caboodle brand cat food. So many shapes and flavors it makes other meals seem downright mousy.
Nice commercial, huh? I thought you'd get a kick out of that one. Because, do we have another one?
We have the Cocoa Puffs one, I think.
Okay, let's see that one. So you see, the work that goes into this. First we had to design the characters and make sure everybody was happy with that. And then they filmed all that live action stuff. They don't do that stuff anymore. If you see commercials, you don't see that kind of quality. And every one of these cells were hand inked and painted in studio with a pen and a brush, the gal that did it. Now this is an example of Cocoa Puffs. It was right when I think the elections were for Bush or something. And so it was, remember there was a long time where they I don't know, couldn't tell who won or something. So this was sort of a take on that, and we had several commercials, and this was the last one. What it tried to do is get kids to vote on which, the elephant or the donkey. So this is called a model for the characters. Let's see what else we have. So that is a layout. That's a layout. And this is some actual animation. Show you kind of him actually. He's moving towards the voting booth. So you can sort of see step down, up into the booth. There he goes. All right, I think now we can show the commercial. This was a very complicated commercial. See, I could never have done this. It's okay.
You voted, we counted, and Sonny wins.
Of course. Look at this.
Your vote showed Sonny how much you love the chocolatey taste of Cocoa Puffs, a delicious part of a good breakfast.
We love chocolate.
And just like he promised, Sonny's made chocolate money. 6 pieces of
Chocolate money in your cereal.
yours is free as special boxes of Cocoa Puffs.
Whew, it makes me tired just looking at it. Oh my God, what a production that was. And that was the second or third one of that series. Okay, so that sort of gives you an idea what it takes to make a commercial and what it takes to make, artwork. Let's see what time. I think we're going to have plenty of
Are
time.
there any questions?
Yeah, let's 2:30. We have quite a bit of time left here, so yeah.
How much input did you have?
If we
in
could
the
ask,
storyboard?
if we could ask people to come up to the front to use the microphone to ask their questions, that'd be wonderful. Or you can raise your hand and I'll come to you because I have a microphone.
Here, you use that, and then bring it back.
I was just wondering, how much input did you have into story ideas when you worked at Hanna-Barbara and whatnot? Did they, as you became a director, animate, progressed up that way? Did you have more input into if somebody presented you by a client,
Yeah,
a
when
story
I-
idea, and then you go, why don't you try this and stuff?
Commercials are very different, and as a director, I had to convince, the client would always give you a rough idea of what they wanted, usually a very bad storyboard, maybe some characters. I would then take that, like for instance, what we just saw, I designed everything. I did the layout. I did something called where you would put color on with the background. And yes, I kind of did that whole story, okay, through drawing a storyboard. So the client tells us what they want. We then give this storyboard animatic and show them. Then they'll say, well, we change this or change that. Then we go into production, and then they get to see it again. They might have some changes, but they can't do too many, they have within a budget. So that's why I went into commercials, because I got to do all of that. I got to design, I got to create characters, I got to make it work within, of course, the client's parameter. That, to me, was the most creative jobs I ever had, and that's why I wanted to.
But also, as in a studio, the producer, director make the decisions to begin with, and they follow it through. They have to approve all of the work that is done in the following departments. So The storyboard is approved by the director. The voices are chosen by the producer and the director. The cast, they will pull in the different actors to make sure that there is the correct voice that works with that character. So the producer and director, even though they may not be doing the actual work, they have to approve it.
Go ahead. Talk about series, a TV series is just, it's a very big process. And at Klasky Csupo, we had some incredible writers, very good writers. And as told by Ginger, was designed and written by a woman, one of the first, I don't remember her name, but she was so talented. If anybody saw As Told by Ginger, it was such a lovely, lovely coming of age of teenagers, and it was so cute.
We'll switch. We'll take that one.
Okay, so production was, like she said,
Thank you.
what can I say? I lost my train of thought.
It's all right.
Yeah, because everything is so compartmentalized, it really starts with the script. And a lot of times the writers are, they have a lot to do, they're producers as well. Sometimes they're even directors. But the directors on the feature films that I know, they're in charge of everything. They approve everything. And they have a lot of work to do. They're sitting every day looking at takes. They're sitting every day making decisions. And then they have sequence directors that are now getting the work done. And each time they have to have a pencil test. Pencil tests are when you shoot each scene and then you see that it's working, and then if before it's working, it's okay. You know, before computer animation, it was much harder. It was so much. If you wanted to see what you did, even in a commercial house, even though we had our own camera, a big animation camera in studio, you shot what your scene was, maybe 2-3 scenes. You had to take it to the editorial. You had to have it developed, and you wouldn't be able to see it until the next day. Or you even had it filmed at a film place that just specialized. So it was a very long process. Once we had computer animation, or once we had pencil test machines, that was like, whoa, we can see. It was like a little camera up here, a little light board. You could put your thing and click. Then you could run it back, and you saw it on the film. Oh my God, did that make life easy? And then we had computer animation, and that was the first computer animation started in ink and paint. And that revolutionized, at least in the commercial business. Instead of having only 6 levels, all this time we were only working with those 6 levels that we had to manipulate. You could have hundreds of levels. It was because ink and paint, then computer was able to compensate. You could combine it. Talk about how ink and paint used to be with the cells.
Originally, the paint had to be adjusted. If you had a color, say sunshine yellow, the actual color of the cell itself has a slight tint to it. So the first level had to be painted one color, and then the second level had to be adjusted to appear to be the same color as the first level, and all the way up to 6. So you had level 6 as opposed to level 1. It was a totally different color, but it all appeared to be one color when they actually put them all down together and photograph it on the colored background, then it appeared to be all just one drawing, where it was indeed 6.
If you could, please raise your hands as you have questions, and I will bring a microphone to you. And I'm also keeping track of your hands, and I'll come to you in the order that you're raising them. But we got a question here first.
To begin with, just noticing our audience being about 80% of us were directly affected on our Saturday mornings by you two people. And I want to acknowledge that. I mean, I'm honored to have you here, you know. You mentioned how at some point, you know, some of the buildings didn't even allow women in the building. Now, I know a little backstory that both of you are instrumental in the forming of a organization promoting women in animation, and I'd like you to, you know, comment on that and that formation.
Thank you for bringing that up. We did indeed. About 25 years ago, we started something called Women in Animation, and it was a group of about 10 women that we decided that it was time to give credit to women and to celebrate the women in animation. And it was indeed, we started out by giving like little luncheons, taking some of the oldest women, recording their stories, and then having a luncheon for them and have them talk. And it was so much fun. It was wonderful. And eventually we would have panel discussions. We would give about 3 major panel discussions a year, and we would invite directors, we would invite producers, we would invite voiceover artists, so that we would cover all the different aspects of animation with the experts. And we did that. I worked on it for 20 years. And it was really, really nice. When I was working at Klasky Csupo, they had a nice auditorium. And for 12 years, we had actually at that place, at Klasky Csupo. And it was very, very informative. It has sort of changed hands now. It's sort of run more as a recruiting aspect. They have like meets and greets, and they have a lot of producers there. And so a lot of women are getting jobs through it now. When we were doing it, there weren't that many jobs. It was going through a lot of changes, but if people got a job out of it, that would be nice. It was more of an educational thing and a celebration thing. Thank you for bringing that up.
No, whoops. Ella, over here, Bonita. I remember, I think it was the early 80s when, well, for one thing, in the theater, you know, everybody learned with the old hand things and would pull the lights up and down and try to different colors and so forth for the theater and Lifetime. And then that all got put onto computer programming. Then with sound design was the same thing. You know, we went from analog, and then everything became not just synchronized, but also, you know, you had sound envelopes. And I remember how drum machines used to just drive me crazy when I would hear them on recordings. And so I'm leading up to my question here. And then I worked with an artist in real-time graphics when Apple made the toaster. And Paint 3 package came, you know, and this was in the 80s. So now all of this is actually in one program, the sound and the graphics, the movement, and the lighting. So I'm asking you, do you think that the quality of animation now is better with this kind of computer-generated technology? Or do you think it's the same or better before?
It's sort of like comparing apples and oranges. To me, 2D animation, and you know The Simpsons is still 2D, there are still shows that are still 2D animation. Production, because of the cost of it, 2D animation is still very limited, but I prefer 2D animation. However, Pixar changed CGI because they were smart enough to create characters that moved as a computer, much easier with computers. Pixar, to me, is the best you can get in CGI. Everything is CGI. Now, if you want to see a Smurf and say, okay, there's CGI Smurf and original Smurf, there's no comparison. Original beats it every time. A digitalized Scooby-Doo, really? I mean, come on. Yeah. They just doesn't, but you know, they do all this because the technology is there, and they have no imagination. They just keep redoing old stuff and then putting it in CGI, and then you think it's great. A lot of shows that are on TV still use 2D animation, and I have to say the animation right now, because you know, we had COVID, didn't hurt the animation business because already everybody was working at home on something called a Cintiq. They have these computers where you draw right on it, and everything is, you know, you can do storyboards, you can make it bigger, you can flop it, you can do all this stuff, and you can work right at home. And they have Zoom, and my goodness, it's flourishing. It's flourishing. Up in Vancouver, by the way, there's all kinds of, Disney's opening up another studio up there. Titmouse, which is a famous studio in LA, just built a studio up in Vancouver. And the reason I'm mentioning is because I helped start an animation studio back 27 years ago in Vancouver. And I got my old mentor, Lee Mishkin, up there, and he was the dean of animation. And he worked there, and we taught. It's a one-year program, and they taught enough basic animation that these young kids were able to get jobs. And now they don't even teach, you know, you don't draw anymore. Everything is even 2D animation. They use programs, something called Harmony. You know, they teach animation, how to do it on the computer, but all the basics of animation, the squash, the stretch, the movement, timing, all that is the same.
I love what you mentioned about sound, because to me, it's not just the artwork, it's not just the animation, it's the sound, the production, and the music that also go into making an animated film. And because it is a collaborative effort, I think everybody can take a bow. And sound design, I think, is very important. And what they can do with sound. And this Atmos sound, which is the new thing, which is it really blows your mind. It's just, you just wonder what's going to come up next. But it's been wonderful to be a part of it in this small little realm that we are in. But it takes an awful lot of people to make a really good picture.
Yeah, animation is totally international. You know, in fact, Willie Ito, our dear friend, he wrote a children's book, and somebody in Italy said, "We love you, come over here." They're going to make an animated film out of it. So there you go. I love the Italians, by the way. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question with the older animation process. You mentioned several things, so it's a multi-question around the same topic. One is you talked about animators and assistant animators. It sounds like the animator may draw key scenes and the assistant fills in the motion in between the scenes. And then I have a question about the voices. Are the voices done first, and so the animation can copy the mouth and how it moves? And then the last question is, and then you can maybe comment on these, is you talk about different stages of animation, 6 different stages. Is that like background and characters and that kind of thing? So thank you.
Unfortunately, I didn't bring a chart, but recently I was asked to make a chart of all the different departments and how one department hangs on the other. And yes, indeed, the sound, the voice inflection is extremely important. And if as the animator draws it, he listens, she listens to the sound and exaggerates when it needs to yell or be calm. And because like in Robin Williams, when he did the genie in the, what was it? Aladdin, thank you. There was like 6 minutes of total ad lib that he did. It was not on the script. And that whole bit where he goes, oh yeah, it's such a headache, you know, remember that? The voice, indeed, the soundtrack determines a lot. However, the voice has to match the characters. So it's all a collaboration. What was your other question?
Just the
different stages of animation. Now there was straight ahead animation, like Hugh Fraser, who was the man who I followed as an assistant animator. My boss came to me and said, if you will follow Hugh in a year, because I was an assistant animator at that time, I'll make you an animator. Because Hugh Fraser drew every drawing just straight ahead. The sizes would maybe change as he would draw this character going across the stage or doing whatever he was doing. And it had to be pulled together. So as an assistant animator, I had to synchronize it to when did he want to squash it? When did he want to stretch it? That was my decision then as an assistant animator to make it coordinate and to move properly. Where with extreme animation, you have the character, like Lee Mishkin would do 1 and 7, and 4 in the middle could be up or it could be down. And that would be the assistant, unless the animator, and a good animator, will determine where it is going to stretch or squash. This is an example of a rough drawing, and then as a cleaned up drawing. And it's almost exactly the same, but it's very different, especially when it had to be colored. In the early days, I think they have a program now where it doesn't necessarily have to be closed up, but every single line had to be connected. Otherwise, it would bleed red out over here. And I think they've changed that.
Yeah, now you don't have to worry about that.
But so there is the animator, the assistant animator, animator, key assistant, assistant animator, in-betweener, and then ink and paint.
And also, you talked about limited animation. You mentioned hip movement when you worked at Disney, hip movement and that kind of thing. And then Hanna-Barbera, more limited, is that where the body's pretty much the same, but you're just moving the arms and the mouth?
Yes, you could tell, can't you?
Oh, yes.
That's what was so a good animator would be able to use limited animation. And the thing about it, if you put it in a good pose, you could say maybe animate the whole body and then hold it and just have dialogue, blah, 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 head move, blah, 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 body move, blah, 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 back. You see, with just a limited amount of animation, but with the idea of good posing, you would hit the things, and that's how we learned, that's how we kind of incorporated fuller animation by using, again, these principles. If you actually had a little we call it anticipation, up into this, hold, into that. So there will be, and you could hold it for 4 frames, you could hold it for 8 frames, and of course you had walk cycles. That means you would maybe have 8 drawings and the background would move behind it. The character would stay in place, dot, 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 dot. Or they would move the 8 drawings and they would, just pan the drawing so many things. So, does that help?
Yes, that's great.
Okay, yeah?
We always look forward to going to the city where my parents live, where we see TV. And the TV doesn't work. We have to turn the antenna just to watch a little drawing move. And my father is an artist. He draws a lot. And my question, apart from the honor, is how does your individual artistic talent truly play in a community of artists where you have to come up?
It's absolutely divine. When you are in a studio, you're working with some of the best artists in the world because they all came out of backgrounds, they went to school, especially in California. We had Chenards. Up in Canada, they had great animation traditions, and I drew all my life. So if you're a doodler, or if you just like to draw, or if you like to make things, just do it, because I draw all the time, and I'm not in the profession anymore. Except, of course, for Dick DeAngelis's film, ahead of their time, Sequins, Honey War. Yes, I think what you're saying is to become an artist it was just a natural thing for me. I did it because it was my passion, and it still is. Not everybody still draws, not everybody wants to draw. Sometimes people go in the business and they can't draw, and they just like CGI. They like to work on computers. There's all kinds of things. There's so many different jobs. They like to compute, they like to make programs, they like to do games. There's just so much happening. But there are schools now that teach all that technical stuff. But if you're an artist for life. So just enjoy being creative, whatever it takes. Photography, doodling, sculpture, walking in the park and looking at a tree and just relishing in the beauty. I mean, that's all part of creativity. I don't know what I'm saying here. Okay.
I remember one animator when I was learning told me to just observe motion and people and expression, and it really was helpful. Like even if you're just looking at a fire or a smoke, the way it billows, or a butt, the way a butt moves, especially a big butt. Oh my God, it's amazing. But just learn, observe, and create.
Yeah, yeah.
My question similar to that, I'm right here. My question similar to what he asked a minute ago is, as an artist, you each have your own self in your artwork. what do you feel? Do you feel like you were able, working for someone else to make their creations? At what point do you feel you put yourself into the work, and can you see your own ideas and your own work in what you've done? And maybe what's an example of what you felt? You showed some pictures of what you designed with, was it Much Ado About Nothing? I don't remember which, but so that was you, and that was something you came up with. What would be an example of something that you saw as your own reflection of your own artwork?
Well, I just want to say that when you animate, you are putting yourself in every drawing because you're literally bringing that character to life. So you're putting your personality into that animation. So that's always kind of one of the fun parts of it. It's challenging, and sometimes you have to stand in front of the mirror and you take a stopwatch and you see, stop. So I did that movement, then you figure out, so I'm acting. Animators are frustrated actors.
You act on paper.
The worst way to have to act, but the most fun. And that's what we are. We're actors, but we have to draw it. So that's part of it.
I was once asked to animate a scene on Super Friends, this big super hero. And unfortunately, I made him very feminine, and it didn't work because I was animating it the way I would move, but it wasn't the way he was moving. And so as a good animator, you just really have to think about what you're doing because you will put yourself into it.
We got another question here.
Yeah.
This is my daughter Scarlett, and she wants to know how much art it takes to become an animator.
How much art do you do every day? Do you draw once in a while?
Not very much.
Not very much. Do you like to draw?
Mm-hmm.
Well, do you have a sketchbook? You know, when your birthday comes, you should say, Mommy, I want a sketchbook, and I want some color pens, and I want some pencils, and I want a paintbrush, and I want some paints. And then you're going to start working in your sketchbook. It takes a lot of drawings to make it, but you can do an animated thing with 4 or 5 or 6 drawings. And you put a drawing down, and then you turn the page and do another drawing, and you go back and forth. Oh, I like the way that looks. See, it's moving. There's all kinds of ways to learn to do it. Just start with a sketchbook. Anything else? I think that's it.